Good evening and welcome to our January study session. I'm going to go ahead and start with roll call. Director Decker,
I am here.
Director Zavala,
Here.
Director Smith,
Here.
and Director Barrows.
Here.
And I'm also here. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Snell to walk us through our agenda tonight. We have a few different items.
Thank you, Director Sproul. Hopefully this is loading for everyone. We do have our study session tonight, and we are our committee of the whole meeting from last Tuesday that we lost due to snow day. So we have a robust agenda this evening, and I want to start us off with our student advisory report, and then we'll go into the committee of the whole review. And then we have an early learning report, a communication report, and a PLC impact report. And all those are specific to strategic plan goals that we'll talk about a little bit later. But without any further ado, we have two students that are representing the student advisory. And so I'll turn it over to you both to introduce yourself and talk a little about what's been going on. And I can advance the slides for you. And then the directors might have a couple questions for you. So welcome this evening.
Hi, my name is Tavian Ferrani.
Hi, my name is Autumn Hammond. I am a junior and I go to, VSA, and I'll get started real quick. So what have we been working on in student advisory? So the big purpose of student advisory this year is working on belonging in our school district. So through that, we've been coming together and trying to work on what can we do to help students feel accepted, to feel secure and safe in our schools, and to feel included, as well as what can we do to help students feel as if they can grow and come out of their comfort zone and join clubs and join sports teams and leadership roles. And that's what we've been working on recently. Can you go on to the next slide? Please.
All right, sorry, again, I'm Tavian Ferrani, and I'm a sophomore at Hudson's Bay. And on this slide, we talked about our percentage for our belonging goal. And our percentage was 45. That's what all of the schools agreed on. And we agreed on this on our last meeting, or 2 meetings before at ITED. And we chose this number because we felt like it was a realistic goal that we could achieve, but is also something that would be a big improvement on before. And before it was 41%, and that 4% increase would really help. And then down here where it says school goal, that's just saying the goal again. And then these are some of the things that the other schools talked about to try to improve this belonging score. And then these links below we'll share in the next 2 slides. Can you go on the next slide, please?
So for VSA, which is a school that I go to, there are a few things that we had come up with to work on belonging. So first one was just that the panorama survey is something that we do every year and that all our schools have to do. And unfortunately, a lot of students don't understand the purpose of it. So we wanted to take time to just educate students on what the purpose of the panorama survey is, and hopefully that may help increase our belonging score. And other things that we wanted to work on were more specific to our school, such as since we are an art school, we have a lot of different art forms. So one thing that we could do would be having multiple cross art form showcases, which would allow art forms to come together and work together. And then continuing to work on interpersonal and mental health impacts of the pandemic, because that is still something that is very prevalent in our schools, since a lot of students missed out on a lot of really important years to work on communication and things like that in our schools. Then,
All right. And for my school, Hudson's Bay, we have 3 things. We have increasing membership in school clubs. And we feel like there's a lot of clubs that we have in our school, but there's not a lot of students that are educated about the clubs, that know about the clubs, or even in the clubs. So we'd want to boost that so people feel more involved in the general clubs. We also wanted increasing recognition of all the students. We feel like some students have a sense that other students, like athletes and more like popular like students in the school, have a better recognition than everyone else, and we want to lean in more on the people who don't feel like that they're recognized, and we want to really push towards that. And then we also wanted to create a welcoming committee. So a committee that would start at the beginning of school or just with a group of students, and they would show them around the school, give a school tour, and they would help them get into the school and be more involved. Next slide, please.
So all the schools were able to come up with like 5 to 7 ideas, and they had them all on a huge sheet. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to show all of those. So we just picked a few that we thought were really cool. And one of them was from iTech, which is when you look at the panorama survey, there's a spot that shows belonging, but then there's a lot of other subcategories that talk about different areas, such as like diversity and more specific things about like what in the schools you are struggling with or you're doing well with. And one idea was to look more into those subgroups and try to see per school what are they needing to focus on and what are they as a school needing to work on.
All right. And then for Columbia River, they talked about representatives from clubs and sports being available to talk about their experience. And so basically, they want to have higher ups or the representatives talk about their experience to incoming students. And this leads back to the committee that my school wanted to do. And so we're kind of on the same page where we want to have a committee so they can talk about their experience and welcome in newer students. And this also leads into what I was saying about the athletes. We really want to make sure that everyone feels involved and everyone feels included and recognized, because some students just feel like those athletes and some other people have more recognition, and we really want to hit hard on that.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I really like a couple of things. I like how there's like the overall goal that you guys have. Like everybody has the same goal to increase to 45%, but I like how it's unique to each school, because I think that's kind of shows just every school has its own kind of personality and culture. So what one school is doing to increase belonging might not fit for another school. So I appreciate that you guys have kind of divided it that way. And one of the questions that I was going to have, but that you guys answered, was kind of that education about the survey and like why it's important. And so I was happy to see that, because I know, you know, increasing just even the number of people that take the survey, the number of students, will help just to get more accurate data. Because I always wonder kind of, you know, the people that don't take the survey, is that because they don't feel a sense of belonging and so it doesn't really matter? Or is it just that they don't know necessarily how important it is, or that we actually use the data for something? So I was glad to see that. I think that's great. So great job. I'm excited to see kind of how those all the ideas you have help to increase that number. So good job. Thank you guys for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
I just want to say I appreciated that each school came up with their own strategies towards their goal. But I really liked how you drew a parallel and found similarities between the schools. I think leveraging the work that you're doing at your unique campuses will probably help you build or towards that goal. I'm curious, were there along that line, were there any strategies that some schools came up with that other schools then borrowed, or said, oh yeah, that would be great, or let's take it back to our school?
I think the biggest one was more just informing students, because across the board, a lot of people were sharing how there's not a lot of time for students to actually understand like the purpose of the panorama survey. Because I know a lot of people that are like, they see it in their emails and they're like, oh, it's just another survey. And then they kind of ignore it. But taking the time, I think a lot of schools kind of just said that would be smart to do. Tavian, do you have any?
Yeah, to add on to that, yeah, I think a lot of different schools do kind of piggyback off of each other, and they like see their ideas and kind of connect with that. But that's why we have our meetings, especially the in-person, because then we could really get together and see what we can compare and what is good for not only the general amount of the district, but also the specific schools.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I just want to add that one of the things that I loved about all the ideas to increase belonging is that it's relying not on you guys and your teams to do it, but you're bringing in even more students to help bring in more students. And that's great because you're expanding the scope of the types of kids that are going to be involved and helping other people belong. And so that was, when I was looking at all of the ideas, it was like, oh, they have to bring in more than just what they're working with. So that just keeps expanding and growing. So that was wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. This was your first time presenting at a board meeting, and you did a wonderful job. And you both stepped up into leadership roles already on student advisory, and so I'm thankful for that. I think maybe to wrap up, because I had an opportunity, Tavian, to go to Bay and see what's happening as a result of some of the student advisory work, and maybe could you talk about kind of how you're taking advisories at Bay and what you're doing with that to try to move forward with this belonging goal? I know there was a lot of energy around the door decorating and some other things that students were suggesting to staff. And I think you also even talked at staff meetings. Could you give us a little insight on that?
Well, yes. So I'm in student advisory, but we also have an equal time group, and that's our own personal school group. And we have this equal time where every second period on Mondays and Fridays, there's a little time for student bonding, community bonding, and like general grade checking and things like that. And we decided to come together as an equal time group. And so a representative from each equal time class, every class, we came together. And so we're doing meetings once a month as well. And one of the ideas, like you said, is the door decorating, and that's a school-wide thing that we've been doing. And recently, during the winter time, during December, we did a school one that was based off winter, and everyone was really involved. We think it was really good for the community bonding, and it was like a competitive sort of thing too. And we want to keep bringing that back and keep having different ideas about that competitive sense and like the bonding and the general like community getting together.
Thank you. I was invited by you all to come to that meeting. I was really impressed. Alan, is there any other thing that you would like to share before we wrap up tonight?
Our school actually does door decorating competitions during the wintertime as well, and I think that's probably one of everyone's favorite activities. So I definitely would love to try and brainstorm more school-wide activities and like competitions like that we can all do to do that because people love doing that. So that's it.
As an elementary school teacher, I will tell you that sometimes if you think back to the fun things that you did as younger kids, you'll enjoy them with a different level maybe of competition or enthusiasm and definitely skill than you could before. And so it kind of, when you were saying door decorating, I'm like, yep, we used to do that in kindergarten. So that's very cool.
Mhm.
Well, thank you both for your time. Our next meeting is January 31st, and we'll be at the Heights campus. And so we're looking forward to that. As Tavian said, there's a lot of collaboration and fun that happens in that. It's so, if any of the directors want to come to any of these meetings, it just, you can't help but smile as students are giving each other tours of their building and just talking about how important it is for them to support each other. And all these students give their time and energy because they want to make a difference. And so really grateful to you both for joining us tonight, and look forward to seeing you on January 31st.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Director Sproul, if you'd like, at this point of our agenda, we're going to go to the canceled meeting, the special meeting committee of the whole. And I can walk through some of those items with Mr. Blechschmidt's help, if that's okay.
That sounds great.
Okay, I'll reshare my screen.
All right, I'll jump in because I'm happy to report we only have one item on the contract side of the agenda, and it's an item or a type of approval that we're seeking that you're very familiar with. We've wrapped up yet another one of the bond-funded capital projects, and so our recommendation would be to accept purchase agreement number 2023-016 for replacement bleachers at Geyser Middle School. Norpac Seating was the selected vendor, and they've completed the project to our satisfaction. The amount was $173,540 plus Washington State sales tax. So I don't know if you've had a chance to go to a game at Fort or Bay, but those new bleachers are pretty sharp. And so it's nice that we're able to replace another set of bleachers with kind of that state-of-the-art, more durable material.
Okay, the next areas are under policy, and we have some that are up for first reading. We have the first one is 1400. The next one is a first reading of policy 2220, and this is school calendar, and we'll talk a little bit more about school calendar in here as well. There's a first reading of policy 6605, which is about student safety. In these policies as well, Taylor's put in why the rationale and kind of the source for why this is being moved forward. And I'll pause to see if there are any questions about first readings. Okay. So under teaching and learning, we do have the school district calendar, the 24-25 version. So we're anticipating that this could be up for a potential action item, or it could be up just as informational, depending on, we always engage with labor leaders and others in the district to have their eyes on things as well. And so, and we're just coming off of a winter challenge, and there's always questions about calendar and things like that. So there is a process for us to go back and forth, but there is a draft attached here for a starting point. And as we make any changes before the February 13th meeting, we would let you know and link the updated calendar in here for your consideration. We also share the calendars regionally with other districts because we know that we have employees that work in different districts, and things like spring break are really important to have lined up in the region. So we try to do some coordination that way as well.
I have a question about the calendar. I know the school year didn't get extended significantly because there were some makeup days already, but is there any talk, because a lot of areas, you know, got hit hard with having to cancel because of the ice. So is there any conversation around, I don't know, like when you get to a certain point of like number of like snow days, is there discussion at like a state level about like waivers or like alternate options besides just extending days, like, you know, minutes, or I don't know.
Yes, the state doesn't want any, they always say we don't want any air waivers until we're well into April or May, because the weather, you know, I think 2 years ago we had a maybe a late start right after spring break or something. So they, there is always discussion about that. We do have instructional hour requirements and day requirements that we need to meet. And there's a waiver process that you go through if there's extended numbers of school days. It's a good thing that we built in some snow days into the calendar, because what we heard is when you extend too long in June, they're lost instructional days, even if you're able to come back, because students' attention, families, plans, different, you know, if you're at the high school level, AP classes have tested, you know, there's just a lot of factors that the days aren't maybe as valuable as a day in March or a day in April, if you're talking about June 26th or whatever. So we are recommending in the calendar that we build in some snow days as well. And then sometimes, like if about 7 or 8 years ago, the governor just declared a state of emergency too in a situation, and that allows for some other processes to kick in with waivers. And then there's always a lot of competing factors in that, and just logistical challenges, because we have some staff members that are paid hourly, some past staff members are paid salaried. And so we want to always try to make everybody whole as possible and give our students as many school instruction days as possible too. So it's pretty complex. I feel like anytime it's a snow day, it just means like there's 80 million other things that we have to work on now. So it's so much more easier if we can just have school. But obviously we want to be safe in having school as well. So we'll factor some of this into this calendar. And then to your point, Director Barros, like look at opportunities and options if weather continues to be a factor. One question that comes up a lot is, why don't we do remote learning? And we did that pivot during the pandemic, and since that time, if we were to pivot to remote learning in our state, that doesn't count for instructional hours or days at this point, unless the state did something different. And so it's not that simple. And then the other piece is like making sure that everybody has their device, everybody has access, and trying to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. So that is a common question that we get, and it's a good question. But we haven't, as a state, like adopted a pivot to remote and an inclement weather kind of situation yet.
Thank you.
Most
No,
elementary
that was
schools.
I was gonna say, I know those questions were more about this current year's calendar versus next year's calendar, but and it prompted me to think of that.
Yep.
And I was just going to say, most elementary school kids don't take their device home every night. So there's no way that they could make it up.
Yeah, it can be a challenge. Director Sproul, you unmuted as well.
Yeah, just one question, and this is more clarification also about this past week as opposed to, well, I mean, I see it's the same pattern in next year's proposed calendar, but why we didn't utilize the semester break day for a snow makeup day. I know that was a question I fielded a lot in the past 10 days.
Yeah, we work with our labor partners, trying to anticipate the schedule. And so we want to give notice to everybody, families and staff, if there's a change. And so we've worked with like usually a 2-week notice kind of protocol to use a day. Now, if we were getting into a situation where we don't have any snow days left and, we've used it, then we'd need to revisit that. But in this situation, we had our snow days built in. It wasn't within kind of 2 weeks, kind of the normal standard notice. And so we keep the semester break day as is. We've shifted the grading time for that and the actual start of the second semester to allow students to have an equal or relatively equal number of days first semester and second semester. And then try to accommodate that challenge for our teachers by when they need to submit the grades, giving a little more flexibility around that so that they can utilize still the semester break day, even though we have a few days after that would be in first semester. So it's definitely a really good question, and one that I know that we field a lot, and we try to think through all those scenarios. And of course it happens with less than 2 weeks before is how the weather event plays out. But usually that semester break day is when we lose snow days before winter break. Then we have plenty of time to notice and say, hey, we're gonna utilize the semester break day, maybe adjust our semester. And that's been kind of the protocol historically around that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep this moving. We do have some instructional materials for your review with a recommendation from the Instructional Materials Committee. As usual, those are linked in here, and within that report, you can drill down deeper if you would like. So any questions that come up around that, happy to answer those between now and the February 13th meeting. And that's the regular meeting that we have. We are scheduled for an executive session potentially, but as you know that this was the one that we're going to hold tonight. And so it's not necessarily for the February 13th meeting. This is a little confusing. We're talking about what's going to be on the February 13th. And we were also talking about what happened on last Tuesday or didn't happen. And now we're going to make happen tonight. So we do have an executive session regarding some potential litigation. So any other questions about the meeting on the 13th? Okay. Then I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing again and pull up our presentations for tonight. So we have 3 more presentations. I'm so proud of our students. Like we don't get a lot of students that volunteer for the board meetings. No offense to you all, but we get a lot that volunteer to like go help out with the middle school advisory and things like that. And so it was great that they were willing to do that tonight. And you've recognized some of our familiar student advisory reps for the last couple of years. And so we're trying to to encourage others to take that step. So thank you for your thoughtful questions and comments of them tonight. Our presentation, the rest of the study session is focused on the strategic plan, progress monitoring. I have just a couple of anchor slides, our vision of a graduate, and then also this cluster of what supports that vision of a graduate. So of course, the student-centered experience drives the learning and the vision that we want to realize for each student. And then on either side of that, anchoring that, supporting that is our student-centered staff and our student-centered community. So you're actually going to hear goals in all three areas tonight with team members that have been facilitating that work, bringing it all together, providing leadership. And so our first plan is connected to the student-centered experience. And the board had asked last year about early learning and wanting kind of an annual report related to early learning. We've been providing increased opportunities for students. We're excited to share with you about that. And I have Janelle Ephraim and Daniel Bettis here to present. And I'll drag the slides if you want. Just let me know and I'll turn it over to you both.
All right, thank you and good evening to everyone. Good to see everybody. We just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share the early learning update with you tonight. This, like Dr. Snell said, this plan is a direct product of the student-centered experience goal area for our strategic plan. All right. As you know, our vision is to design a learning experience that will motivate each student to realize their potential and love for learning. And we want students to see themselves represented, supported, and loved through our engaging instruction, curriculum, and our high expectations for their ongoing success towards our vision of a VPS graduate and beyond. The first goal of this student-centered experience in our plan, is to develop and sustain a culture of belonging, safety, and positive student relationships. And one of the sub-goals, which is directly connected to the early learning work plan, is to strengthen support provided to students and families for transitions through grade levels, schools, and graduation. So in support of this goal, we developed the goal to continue to increase access and inclusion for early learners in preparation for their K-12 experience. Thank you. So envisioning a more long-term goal, we'd like to have transitional kindergarten and a continuum of preschool opportunities for all students to realize their potential and love for learning. And Daniel is going to talk with you a little more about why this is important, as well as our measurable outcomes.
Thank you, Janelle. Excuse me. Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, board, for the opportunity as well. What we see our why around early learning is when students are provided that high quality early learning opportunities, this supports the groundwork for the child's success moving through the academic system. It also provides a leveling of the playing field for our children with diverse backgrounds. And also by providing access to quality early learning opportunities, children who attend preschool are more likely to perform higher academically later in their academic career. Next slide. Also, too, we see that providing families opportunities for early learning and encouraging this involvement, this also, too, increases children's continuity in their learning and in their development. Also, too, when we provide opportunities to participate in learning, early learning with students, this is the first step in addressing disparities in access and benefit to their child's education. And when all children have access to quality early learning, regardless of their background, it helps build a more equitable educational system to ensure all students have access to that vision of a Vancouver School District graduate. Next slide. So the expected measurable outcomes, we want to show growth progress on our child's outcome summary exit data for all students exiting early childhood in special education. We also want to increase enrollment to programs that support the transition to the K-12 system. And finally, we want to increase the number of students ready for kindergarten as measured by the TS Gold or WA Kids. Janelle?
Thank you. So in these next few slides, we're going to speak to you more.
Oh, no, this is me, sorry.
Oh, no, this is me.
No, go ahead, Janelle.
Okay. So in the next few slides, we're going to speak with you more specifically about our progress towards meeting these goals. We've seen a significant increase in the number of students who have access to early learning programs in Vancouver. Currently, we have 180 students who are enrolled in transitional kindergarten. 804 students attended our Jumpstart program this fall. We had 99 students attend evening preschool last spring, and the evening preschool numbers are reflected from last year because it is a spring program, but we will update those once we have the program this year. All the rest of the data you see here represents this year. We have 194 students enrolled in our inclusion preschool this year, and 115 students enrolled in our early childhood special education and self-contained programs. And we have 5 students who access early entrance this year. Next slide, please. So our transitional kindergarten classrooms serve children in the district who have not had access to early learning or who have shown that they would benefit from additional preparation to kindergarten. Our teachers in this program, our teachers use developmentally appropriate practices focused on literacy, math, and social emotional learning, and a play-based curriculum where children have the opportunity to learn through exploration and discovery. So TK is in its 5th year of existence, and we're excited about that, 5 years strong. We've provided this program since 2019. At the time of its inception, it started at Ogden Elementary, where we served 17 students. The following year, we maintained 1 classroom. And then the 3rd year, we were fortunate enough to add 2 additional classrooms, serving a total of 50 students. One of those classrooms was added at Ogden and the other at Sacagawea, which allowed us to serve students across the district. In the following year, we were able to add 2 additional classrooms, and that was at Washington and Hazeldale, serving a total of 90 students. And this year, we've added 3 additional schools, RVG, Truman, and Roosevelt, bringing our total to 7 schools who provide TK, 10 classrooms, and serving a total of 180 students. Daniel's going to talk with you about enrollment for inclusion preschool and the ECSE program.
So thank you, Janelle. So you can
Are we all frozen or is it just
No, it's just Daniel.
I think it's
Okay.
just Daniel.
Okay, so Janelle, are you able to speak through this one, or here comes Daniel again?
I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm back.
You're back. Good, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that we've seen a marked increase in initial evaluations from 155 to last school year. We ended at 270 initial evaluations. And then the number of students that we've served, again, have spanned from 128 in 1920 now to 262, with increasing the number of offerings in our continuum of services, both through through inclusive preschool programs and through our ECSE programs, which are more of our self-contained preschool programs. Okay, next slide.
So I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the WaKids assessment data that we have. So the WaKids assessment is a practice that all of our teachers who are in these programs use to observe children while they're engaged in everyday activities. So this is an opportunity for children to show their skills and knowledge, as well as give teachers an opportunity to see where their students are. And the rubric that they use is the TS Gold, also known as Teaching Strategies Gold. And with this rubric, they observe students collect and document data in the area of social emotional learning, physical, cognitive, language, literacy, and mathematics. So this data that you're looking at here this evening shows the percentages of students exhibiting behaviors in alignment with their typically developing 4- and 5-year-old peers, okay? And so the area where we see the largest number of students experiencing readiness in VPS is in the physical domain. Both transitional kindergarten students as well as students in the early childhood and inclusion programs show us that more students are ready in this area than compared to other areas. 88% of the students in TK and 62% of the students in our early childhood and inclusion classrooms exhibit behaviors in alignment with their typically developing peers. So an area where we see more opportunity for growth, however, is in the area of the mathematics domain. So in this domain, we have 56% of our TKs students and 27% of our students in our inclusion and early childhood education classrooms who are showing behaviors that are in alignment with their typically developing peers. Next slide, please.
So in summation, early learning programs are thriving. It's evidenced by the increased access for all of our students in creating that continuum.
Okay, sounds like we might have lost Daniel. But as he said, our education, our early learning programs are thriving. And in our early childhood evaluation center, it has had a 45% growth in referrals this school year. And we're opening additional special education preschool classrooms in this year as well. We're going to continue to work to expand our inclusive programs, preschool programs, and based on our numerous elementary learning programs that our students now have access to, and the limited number of students that are accessing our early entrance kindergarten, we are recommending that we sunset the early entrance to kindergarten program in our district and encourage families who are interested in this program to have their children access our continuum of preschool options that we currently have available. Next slide, please. So our next steps, we'd like to develop an annual early learning report for your review, as Dr. Snell previously stated, as well as we'd like to officially propose a change to the qualifications of attendance and placement policy, and that's policy number 3110, to reflect a discontinuation of the early entrance kindergarten. You have any questions for us?
I have a question. And I don't know Janelle, I don't know if you would, it looks like Daniel is back. This might be more for Daniel versus you. In looking at obviously the increase in referrals for preschool students who then that's an increased number of students on IEPs. I'm wondering about the balance in the inclusion preschool classes, because I know just from my work with early childhood special ed that an inclusion setting is defined by percentage of students on IEPs and not. And so then, you can have a certain number of students in the classroom, but then if students drop out, or maybe students who are not on an IEP then get on an IEP, like sometimes the balance. So as you're having an increase of students on IEPs, are you guys able to kind of maintain the balance of more students in those preschool classrooms who are not on IEPs so that you maintain kind of that inclusion setting, or is it sometimes kind of out of balance, or how's that working?
We work to balance.
Oh, I think we lost him again.
The caseloads, so to stay at the fin, and then we cap the basic ed side or the students at 11, so that we have that level of 50-50. And so we work towards that. And when we need to, we'll open up another inclusive opportunities so that we're not going over that 50-50.
Okay, you cut out for a minute, so
Oh,
I think what you said, you cap you cap one of them.
we cap both.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then has there been any difficulty in like recruiting like students without IEPs to then, keep that balance, or is it more an issue of having to cap it because there's so much interest? Or
We're not having a difficulty at this time finding enough for both sides,
okay,
but most of our referrals right now are for the ECSE side,
okay,
the self-contained side.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm breaking up. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'm going to grab you before you leave again. So I had sent a question earlier today about the number, the 2023-24 enrollment, because that wasn't on the slide that showed all the different numbers. And I noticed that the number of inclusion classes there are fewer inclusion classes this year. Last year there were 12 and this year there are 10 sessions.
Correct.
Is there a reason why we went down rather than?
It's the number of students that we currently have right now to support that. As far as when we're referring kids, an IEP team gets together and determines the program and then the placement for those students. And so we have a higher number of students that are requiring self-contained placement.
Okay. And then
can I ask a follow-up about that?
Sure.
Is it, because I would imagine, I mean, I know when I did early childhood, like as the year progresses, you have to open more classrooms. So is that also part of that too, where those are the current classrooms as of like January, which could increase. So by June, there might be that the number might be the same as it was for last year. Is that accurate or?
Correct. As the year progresses, and thank you for the question, they do ramp up as we're seeing those referrals come through. And we see about 32 a week. I mean, you know, as being part of a clinic, Tracy, that you see a large number as the year progresses. Kathy, did you have another question?
What? Yeah, I had, I think, did you freeze up on me again, Daniel?
I am so sorry. I did.
Okay.
I'm in a freezing mood today.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes if you turn off your video, it works. Sometimes I have that too. So I'm just going to piggyback off of Tracy's question, and then I do have one more quick question for you, and that is, so as you get the referrals, how can you backfill? Like if they don't need self-contained, how do you backfill the gen ed kids into a new inclusion class?
We have a list of title families that have asked for the services, and then we go down that list to fill the classes when we need them, if they're still needing services.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then the last one, on the WAKIDS data, I noticed that it was the ECE and inclusion preschool data on the bottom. Did that inclusion preschool data include gen ed and SPED, or was those just the special ed kids?
My understanding is it's just the special ed students in both sides of the program, the self-contained and the inclusion, but I'll get you a better answer on that.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I was assuming that maybe the gen ed kids from the inclusion were part of the TK, but then I don't know if that's I'm just curious as to who was included in that inclusion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll get that for you.
And then I have one more question, and this one's for Janelle. So I know that we have been blessed in the past to fund our evening preschools through an incredibly generous donation from somebody to be named, never. I'm just wondering how are we doing on that funding?
We are still accessing that funding. What we are finding, however, is that our schools with the TK programs are having less of a need for the evening preschool option, and so I would say that allows us to have the money go further because we have less schools that are requiring evening preschool in the spring.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be a budget issue soon, because I knew it's a donation. Thank you. That's it.
Just Daniel and Janelle, thank you for that summary. I was particularly excited when I saw your 5-year vision. That's very, I like the big goals of expanding and having more opportunities for our kids. I'm curious, we have TK in 7 school sites now. Do we, and this is just because I don't have kids of that age, but are kids accessing out of immediate school boundaries, or are we focusing our student population specifically within those school boundaries?
They are accessing, we're pulling students from across the district.
Okay.
We are giving preference to students who are in that particular school area because that's part of the language for TK for that legislation. However, we were able to originally get all students who are interested access to a program. When we did open some other classrooms, we have acquired a waiting list at this time, though.
And I know that schools have different physical capacities, but I assume with that 5-year vision, there's kind of a 5-year expansion plan. Is the idea to expand to many more schools or have many more classrooms within a concentrated amount of schools?
We'd like to expand to other classrooms. Other schools, and that's largely going to be based on the need in our community.
One other question I had, and feel free to follow up after this. I'm curious, based on it looks like there's been some rapid growth in the last several years. So thank you for all the work to build these programs. But of the students accessing, I'm curious how many are interested that we don't have capacity for. Like, how are we measuring what that future demand is? Just both within individual school communities, but district wide.
Well, as far as our TK program, we are scheduled to meet with some of our community partners here in the next few weeks to talk about need in the community. We have also are exploring opening up the application process earlier so that we can have a better idea of how many families are interested. Historically, we opened up the application in the fall, but we're wanting to do that this spring.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's an exciting thing to grow, but also wanting to grow with the demand, right? I mean,
Right.
it's a balance. So thank you for your work. And I really appreciated, I think it was the slide after the 5-year goals, just establishing how you were measuring the progress. And I appreciate it. That was a good template for my brain, at least.
All right. Thank you for your support of early learning. Thank you all.
Daniel and Janelle, thank you very much.
Wait, I have questions.
Sorry, Director Smith, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, thank you though, Janelle and Daniel, for your presentation. I always love hearing about early learning. It's, I think, some of the most exciting work we do. So, it's one of my favorite topics. I actually have questions about the proposal to eliminate early entrance kindergarten. I'm going to plead ignorance because neither one of my children have August or September birthdays. But is it like the requirement to start kindergarten that you're 5 on the first day of school?
That you're 5 by the end of August.
The end of August. Okay. That was, thank you. And then my other question was, is there a cost for early entrance kindergarten if they're not 5 when they, like, we grant them entrance before they turn 5? Is there a cost to the district for that? Like that we're not getting funding for them?
Well, we do receive funding for those students if they're admitted. What we see though is a large number of large may be an overstatement, but we see a number of students who are families who apply and students who do not pass the test or assessment needed. There is a cost that families have to pay in order to go through the assessment process. There's a cost as far as resources, as far as staff to complete the assessment and interviews with families as well.
Okay, but that's a cost that the families pay, not the district.
Yes, well, they pay for the assessment. They, of course, don't pay for the time that teachers are spending.
I see, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just piggyback on that? I was curious because I know one of the rationales for eliminating it, which I'm all for developmental reasons, was that because we have so many options and there's so few kids that qualify, that it should just not be a part of our general policy. But my question here, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate a little bit, is the kids that do qualify, are they in a school district boundary typically that offers transitional kindergarten? Do they really have that option?
So they really do have the option because we are offering transitional kindergarten from the north to the south end. There's a range, and historically it was non-title schools who were accessing that application process most often.
That's what I figured. So that's why I was wondering, given that most of our TK programs are at title schools, where the ability to access would fall. And while it would only, if we had done it this year, would have only affected 5 students, those are going to be very vocal 5 families. So I just wanted to make sure that we had taken that into account. Thanks.
And we do have students enrolled in our TK program from all of our schools.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One just follow up to Wendy's question. I would be curious, as this is a proposed policy change, to know maybe historically how many students have qualified for EEK, and also what percentage of students whose families are applying for EEK are accessing early entrance to kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. So if you go back,
not necessarily right now. I'm just saying,
okay.
Not necessarily now, but just as a follow-up, just
as a follow-up, absolutely.
Yeah. And we can, because it is a policy change, it would go first reading and second reading. So we can, if directors have questions, that would be awesome to be able to know those, so we can provide those in the first reading with the rationale behind that. And then, that would be the soonest that would be the March would be the first reading, and then the April could be a second reading. So we're just kind of bringing it forward because it fit into this early learning report. And it's a little, I guess, preview of what might come to you as a first reading.
Yes, I apologize, Janelle, I didn't clarify. I meant, should it land on our agenda as a first reading?
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great questions. I'll thank Janelle and Daniel this time and not cut anybody off, hopefully. And we'll transition to our next presentation. So that was about the student experience with the goal area focused on transitions and early learning in particular. The second one is around student-centered community. And we have Jessica Roberts that's here to share a little about this goal and where we're at with it. So Jessica, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. So you can progress to the next slide if you want. So this year we're really focusing, well, the vision of in the strategic plan is to increase family and community trust, connection, and partnership to ensure each student can thrive in their journey towards our vision of a VPS graduate. Partner with families in the community to help determine and deliver needed access and support to our students. And then the specific goal I'll be speaking about is increasing family and community member connection with the school district and or individual schools. So we can go to the next slide. So the strategy that we're employing to focus on these is to really focus on the communication strategy that we're putting behind choices we're making surrounding tactics that we're employing, and then also the platforms that we're using to push messages out. So the key approach behind all the strategies is being really thoughtful about when we're sending this out, who's the target audience, who needs this information, and then what are we hoping that they do with that? Do we want them to understand this better? Do we want them to take an action? Do we need more feedback from them? And then really time it based on what the community is telling us about. This is how I would like to receive information. And this is when I'm most likely to be available to take in that information. So we can go to the next slide. So there's a few things that we're putting in place that really help us align with this. One is the new communications platform Parent Square. And a big reason for going to that is because it facilitated two-way communications. So the first thing is just like when we send you information, we're going to actually give you an avenue so that you can respond to us and let us know, did this hit what you wanted? We've also really focused on a social media strategy, like making sure we have consistency there and a strong, like we actually have a plan for what's happening there, because we know that it's called social media for a reason. That's where people are interacting, and that's where a lot of people are getting their information about the community now, as we see the media landscape start to change nationwide. And then the strategic plan has allowed us to be really focused on, okay, where are we going to grow communications and really align everybody district-wide with, here's what the priorities are when we're communicating. And then this year, we're really also focusing on making sure that we're supporting things like choice programs. So this is like the first half of the school year, is like being consistent about how we're communicating about things and making sure that information is presented in a way that it's easy for parents to compare and contrast what's available to them. And we'll continue doing that in other areas throughout the year, such as with dual language support, kindergarten enrollment, elementary options, and then also budget communications. So just making sure that people don't have to go hunting for information, that we're putting it all in a clear and concise place that can be easily found again and navigated through. Next slide. So this is an example of the objective that we set forth with like social media. So it's not just, okay, let's get some posts and some positive stories up, but it's really saying we're here to build community. We want to build belonging and pride when people come there. All of our content needs to be authentic and engaging. And we want our families to start feeling secure, proud, and confident in their decision to have their students attend our schools. Okay, next slide. So the key to all of this is that we're also measuring results. So you're going to see a couple of things that I'm going to be really passionate about. The one thing is we're going to have a lot of numbers of this is what we pushed out, but most importantly, it's did our audience take that action, or did we see something that they weren't just receivers of information, that they did something after they got it. So on social media this year, we now have 25,000 followers, which is 1,500 more followers. This is actually now updated information. We added 1,000 followers on Instagram last week, and also 500 on are just shy of 500 on Facebook and about 100 on Twitter. And I think a lot of that is because of the way that we did focus on weather messaging. And we were very fast in getting information there and then allowed people to engage once it was there. So in addition to, we have all these followers, they're also talking to one another and engaging with our content. So we've seen, we added almost 60% more posts. So more opportunities for them to see us, which we also know the more often that we post, more often that will show up in people's feeds. And then as a result of that, the amount of people engaging with the content when we posted it is up 268% over last year. Next slide. So just a few things that we're doing on social that really show that engagement that we're hoping to do is short form video content. So we're being really strategic about what works with the algorithm. What kind of content can we put up that we know the algorithm will put in front of people? Because you can post something, but whether or not it gets in front of your followers all comes down to the algorithms of the platforms. So short videos, so those reels, show up whether you're following us or not. So this is exciting because it helps us grow more people to start paying attention to us. So for example, some of the stats are there in the slides, but it's like over 7,000 views for the grad walk reel. We're not followers yet. Over 1,000 when Nick Davies won his award. And then we're also looking for ways to crowdsource content. So some popular things have been like, send your picture the first day of school. And in the past, it could be like, tag that, but we're actually like, no, put it as a comment. And then they start interacting with each other. So it's really building that community. It's not just like, yep, here's my kid's first day of school photo, but they actually start talking like, oh, look, our photos are really similar. And you'll see some of that positivity there. And then we're paying attention to what the community likes. When there's high comments and there's high likes, then we try to give them more of that. Like, this is what they're wanting to see from the schools. So we offer more opportunities that are catering to the desires of our parents. Next. These are just some Parents Square stats. It's just that we are seeing that parents are, most of them are registered now. They still receive the messages, even if they're not registered, but they get some additional capabilities. And 38% have also now downloaded the app. We anticipate that this will continue growing as parents slowly get more comfortable with using the apps and understanding what it can do. But it also allows parents to receive the messages. So it gives them a two-way communication. And then the other thing is it allows them to receive the information in the way they want it. So they will primarily get texts or emails or phone calls, depending on what they've selected as their preferred way of being communicated with. So being, again, responsive to desires. Next slide. And then again, it's just showing that it's increased our engagement, and it's also just giving us more information back about what parents do like. So they're able to interact and say appreciate. We're just able to see more like what they're finding useful and what they're not finding as useful, so that we can coach and continue to tailor to the information that they're hungry for. Next slide. So, and now I'm just going to give some examples of these. Seem like simple, tiny tweaks, but they make a very big impact. So we had 2 times the amount of interest in transitional kindergarten just by rewriting and reordering some of our content, letting parents know what it is, and then pushing it out on new platforms, which has allowed us to justify expanding opportunities, and knowing that we're not taking a risk, that we're staffing and building those classrooms appropriately. Next slide. I'm just going to quickly go through these because they're all examples. The choices programs, we don't immediately have metrics yet, but I wanted to bring this up that I'm pretty excited that we were able to get consistent materials around choice programs this year. So the goal here, and we're hopeful that we see more people enroll, but we're also hopeful that we'll see more families like really understand the program that their child is signing up for. So just making it scannable and easy to look at charts, such as the example on this slide, to understand, is this a half-day program, a full-day program? What skills will my child get? Helping students also make that decision for themselves, because by the time students are in high school, they're very involved in that decision. And so we communicated this out both to students and to parents. We built an entire website where they can also just read very short sentences about the programs. And so we're hopeful to continue with this so that even if they choose not to enroll, we can feel good that they were at least informed that they had the option. Next slide. The fifth grade music program, there's going to be two slides that are really close together, but I think this is a real testament to Parent Square. This year we have 400 students who enrolled, which was twice the number from last year. And we think that's thanks to the message just being tailored and sent out differently. So next slide. And we saw this repeated. So we knew it wasn't a one-off because there was also an after-school dance program. So before we stepped in to support this, there were 10 registered students, and almost immediately after the message went out, the applications went up to 395, which was also double what we typically see. And then we also saw the same thing again with the Family Advisory Committee. We received more than 160 applications for 24 different slots. So we had to find different ways to get those families engaged. Last year, we were actually calling families saying, hey, how would you be interested in this opportunity? So seeing that many families feel that this was a valuable use of their time was really reassuring to us, that they're feeling heard and they're being engaged, and that they are aware that there are opportunities to have their voice heard. Next slide. And this is just like a personal, like where I'm really trying to take communications. This came to us as kind of a roundabout request where someone was asking us to update their webpage, and we weren't really sure, like there was some urgency around their request, but not a lot of additional content. And so I actually set up a meeting, and I don't think, like usually it's like, no, just update the webpage with the changes I've asked for. But we actually found out that the urgency was around that we needed more of these forms completed and able to continue getting Title I funding and those things. So we were actually able to coach through, like, we can update your website, we'll be happy to do that, but we need to employ actually more tactics than you're requesting and in a different way to move parents to action right away. So we had actually sent a Blackboard message via email over the summer. So again, it was like maybe not the best timing, and we had a different platform. So we really worked on, let's rewrite this message so we're telling parents how it benefits them to fill out this form, not how it benefits the school district, like not why the school district needs you to do it, but why you should be intrinsically motivated to do that. And then let's send it out on Parent Square, and let's be really careful, like let's be really thoughtful about the timing, because it was still the summer. We sent it out, and within an hour of it being sent out, an additional 3,000 surveys were completed within 2 hours. And then we continued checking in with the department, like, is that enough? How many do we need? And so it was like, no, like that was a great response, but we still need to motivate more. So it's like we followed up with an email reminder, and we were able to get an additional 1,000. So that's also what we're hoping to do, is not just disengage, like, okay, the message has gone out, communications job here is done, but we continue checking in on, it's not just about, did we see people open the email? Did they take that action that we wanted them to take? So that's where we're hoping to get as much as our bandwidth allows with those top, especially like district-wide priorities as they align with the strategic plan. And I think that's my last slide, but I'll just check before I say that it is. Yeah, okay, great, thanks. So any questions for me? I'll stop. I think I just flew through those. I get excited. I'm long-winded.
Jessica, you mentioned, I think, but I wanted to make sure, when you had all the stats about social media, you said that was across Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Is that right? Are those the three main
Yeah.
platforms that the district is using for social
Yes.
media? Okay.
We don't prioritize Twitter as we post on Twitter, but we don't prioritize it as a key goal. There's like, I could go down a rabbit hole, but there's a lot of reasons why we don't think that that's where our community is most likely engaging. You get more like if you want a nationwide platform, but public schools are a very local thing. So that's Facebook and Instagram are our primary focus.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are on Instagram because I don't even think I knew that. So I was like, oh, I need to follow VPS on I mean, I follow and engage on Facebook with the district website, but I didn't realize that we were active on Instagram too. So that's fun to know.
Yes. The content is very similar.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just slightly tailored for the different platforms.
Yeah, and I definitely just kudos you because I feel like I have noticed a difference in the social media posting recently. I think it's been great just to see people engaging, and I feel like I'm seeing it more in my news feed rather than having to like one of those pages that like I go to find out like what's been being posted. Like I'm seeing VPS stuff kind of popping up more often. So yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. Great. I love to hear it.
I just want to say as a parent, I've definitely noticed a difference this school year in how information is coming to me, and it definitely seems very focused and targeted towards my students. So, thank you for that. I think one thing I've noticed this year in regards to more social media is promoting what's going on the individual school pages, and I think that's there's still more opportunity there, but I think as families can get very down a rabbit hole of their own school community and lose sight of what all the amazing things going on. So keep up the good work. Also, just sharing those spotlights around individual student and school successes, because I think what you did in December with a consolidated performing arts calendar, that was brilliant. I thought it was great just to have one place to go for all of the different events.
Great. We will definitely do that.
I also just want to say kudos to everyone. But Jessica, thank you for, I think, I know at the beginning I would always say like, I want to look like Yakima, and I would say, Yakima, we're doing better than Yakima. So like, yeah. I know I'd compare a lot. So but I think it's phenomenal. And so I just want to say thank you, and a big thank you also to our staff.
Thank you. I always pass everything along. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen, any other questions or comments? Jessica, thank you for the update. That was our first community goal. We've had staff goal and experience goals. So it's just nice to get into all three areas of the student-centered support plan for the strategic plan. So thanks, Jessica. And it also kind of highlights different uses of data to share the progress monitoring. Of course, on the vision of a graduate, we're going to focus in on some of those indicators related to academics and graduation. But when we're talking about engaging our community, we have to think differently about that. So appreciate the team doing that. Our last goal update today is related to student-centered staff. And this is the third goal area in this one. And we have Jim Gray here to present some information for you. So I'll turn it over to you, Jim.
Well, good evening, directors. It's so good to see you. It feels like forever since I've had a chance to speak to you. Normally, I would have my co-lead with me. Our co-lead from last year, Carrie Snow, is in the classroom, and we are transitioning to a new co-lead. So I'm sorry tonight, you just get me, but I'll do my very best to do this work honored. Obviously, this is goal 3 under student-centered staff. So this is a student-centered staff work plan. The vision is to advance each student on their journey towards our vision of VPS graduate through a diverse and skilled workforce that reflects our student population, to develop a culture of belonging by honoring the unique gifts of each student in an inclusive and inspiring learning community with both physical and emotional safety. Specifically under the S3 goal, utilize the professional learning community model to focus on learning as our fundamental purpose through a culture of collaboration that results in measurable increases in student learning. Don't worry, I will not read every single slide. I wanted to really bring that out because I underlined focus on student learning, culture of collaboration, and measurable increases in student learning, because those are the three big ideas of a PLC. And just a quick reminder that the PLC is the entirety of the district as a whole. And it's a fundamental shift in our paradigm as a district. It's not just those collaborative teams in the classroom. That's been problematic over the years, but this is an entire district as a whole. And those are the three big ideas of a PLC. Our 5-year vision is a previously adopted team goal from the district level guiding coalition, which is the previous mission of the district. The Vancouver Public Schools will be a high functioning professional learning community. I wanted to highlight that the guiding coalition, and we have multiple levels of a guiding coalition. I'm referring here to the building level guiding coalition and the district level guiding coalition. We will monitor the impact to student learning and recommend next steps related to professional learning, instruction, curriculum, and assessment. My hope when I read those words to you is that other work plans come to mind, and this is the vehicle that we are using to move that work forward. So as you're aware, our focus after approximately 13 years of PLC work is to reestablish our cultural foundation of collaboration and communication. This slide, I intentionally put this in here to highlight this. This is a slide that Jeff uses in virtually every presentation to staff or the community or even to the board oftentimes. That is the two-pronged approach to student learning. And directly referenced in this two-pronged approach is the professional learning community model. Again, highlighting that this is a way we do our work. The professional learning community process leverages teacher voice to ensure job-embedded, relevant learning experiences that place the most highly skilled people directly in contact with students. This creates a culture of student learning through shared commitment and collective responsibility by focusing on student outcomes in the form of data and goals. My hope tonight is that you'll hear direct connections to those other work plans, as I mentioned before, that have presented before me. This underscores the PLC process as the vehicle, or in the student learning theory of action, the do portion. So looking at the slide that says 543, 543 relates to the 5 shared commitments, the 4 essential teams, and the 3 big ideas of a professional learning community. The VPS 5 shared commitments are: we are committed to working in collaborative teams with collective responsibility for student learning. We are committed to ensuring a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all of our students. We are committed to monitoring student learning with frequent team-developed common formative assessments. We are committed to using evidence of student learning to identify the practices that are working and discontinuing those that don't. And we are committed to providing systematic interventions and enrichments. I wanted to take the time to read those to you because those are our non-negotiables. It may look a slightly different at Sacagawea than it does at Skyview High School, but those are our 5 non-negotiables as a system and how we operate. And quite honestly, it would look the same, those 5 shared commitments, how we go about the work among the district's level guiding coalition as well as the board. So just wanted to kind of highlight that. And obviously you can see there the 4 essential teams. And on the next slide, well, go ahead, Jeff, go to the 3 big ideas. And here are the 3 big ideas of a professional learning community. Obviously, these are embedded in the goal statement too, which is a focus on student learning, a shared commitment and collective responsibility. That's that culture of collaboration, and a focus on outcomes, not just data, but creating goals in which which deliver that needed data. Next slide, please. The 2023-2024 expected measurable outcomes. Each building guiding coalition will complete a mission, vision, shared commitments, and norms. They're in the process right now. The guiding coalition team, we partner with Solution Tree to create training for our principals, and each building has a co-lead, a teacher co-lead, and we bring them in. It'll be 5 times this year to essentially train them on how to develop mission, vision, shared commitments, and norms. Every building will have those relative to their own building by the end of this year. We're in the process of creating guaranteed and viable curriculum. As you're aware, we have gone through the process of digging in again to creating essential standards, and we went through the process this year of having teacher-driven priority standards, a survey using Qualtrics. It was problematic, but essentially what we've gotten to and what we should be able to produce is at least a top set of 5 priority standards that our teachers, K through 12, created in Vancouver Public Schools. It's foundational to all the work that we're really going to do around MTSS, UDL, and a lot of different assessments also. So we're going to recalibrate our 5-year implementation plan. Every building collaborative team, guiding coalition, as well as the district guiding coalition, is going through data analysis protocols and bias training. The training for our building co-leads will be on February 22nd this year. We're super excited about that. Brian and Chris, as you may be aware, are also leading the entire district at each level through an assessment review process that is starting this spring also. And again, our measurable incomes are creating 2-way communication systems between the 4 essential teams. This presentation is part of that 2-way communication as the board develops the mission and goals for our district, that then the rest of our goals nest within those goals. I wanted to bring up creating sustainable systems because in the absence of intentional culture, you still have culture, but is it the culture that you want? And so to do this, we have to create sustainable protocols and systems. And one of them is to create quarterly or more than quarterly co-lead trainings or check-ins. The first of which happened this year on November 2nd. It was an 8-hour training. So every building principal and every building teacher co-lead was present. It was a focus on mission, vision, shared commitments, and norms with a Solution Tree provided trainer. So it wasn't Jim Gray up there giving his version. It was Solution Tree coming in and training our teachers and our principals and co-leads. There was a portion of it that's a nuts and bolts presentation. We always have that, as well as a thought exchange tool used as a feedback tool from those co-leads and principals on next steps and questions they may have. There was also facilitated discussion by level, meaning elementary and secondary, as an ongoing communication process. What's going well? What supports are needed? As an example of what is needed and what has now been provided, we are able to provide each building 88 supplemental hours for their guiding coalitions to meet, as well as the co-lead for each building to be provided time to meet with the principal so that it's not embedded within the workday. So that information that was a need in the system came out of that training and different discussions. We were able to provide that with Brett's support. So the summative report, student achievement and experiential data as is measure of student success. As I mentioned before, I'm hoping that a lot of what I've just said is reminiscent of other work plans that have been presented. So our measure of success in becoming a PLC will be measured by panorama data, iReady, SBA, WEDA access, discipline, attendance, least restrictive learning environments. Those data points are our measures of success in our becoming a professional learning community. While we don't focus directly on those measures as far as teachers, our focus is on putting the most highly trained teachers in front of kids, because that's what impacts the teaching. So Next slide, please. Our next steps are guiding coalitions to continue to model collaborative systems. We're going to leverage the 5 commitments, the 4 essential teams, and the 3 big ideas, as I've said before. And you can see there the different areas that we're going to continue to focus in on. The highlight of what I wanted to show you tonight was less about my slides and more about what the system is telling us. So what is different now than that has really been in the last 13 years? So as you watch, so first of all, huge thanks to Jessica's team for going out. We wanted to get voices from the field, and specifically we're trying to identify exemplars. And as you know, Marshall's 2nd grade PLC team has done great work, especially over the last couple of years in their PLC. So we went to Marshall to ask their principal and co-lead to give us some feedback. We also asked the principal and the co-lead at Fort Vancouver High School to give us some feedback. So as you watch this short video, please focus on the question of why are we focused on guiding coalition, and maybe what is different now in our work. So you'll see Kurt Scheidel and Luana Ingram from Fort, and Mandy Green and Julie Cavaretta from Marshall. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just if this doesn't buffer well over this, then we'll make sure that the link is embedded in the board docs and that you have access to it. Just sometimes over the Zoom webinar feature, it doesn't work great. So we'll see, and hopefully it works.
I was able to access it in the slides that you sent to us.
Allows for individuals to have the greatest fulfillment in their job through working in a collaborative manner on a regular basis.
I feel like the structure now allows for us to get together. So I'm able to work with my co-lead, the principal, Kurt, and we can kind of discuss the things that we see happening in our different PLC groups, and we can pull feedback from different groups to figure out where they are in the process, and then start to have those discussions about what kind of support that each group needs. Because just like our students, not all teams need the same thing. They're at different places, and they have different amounts of teachers that have been here a while, or all new teachers. And so it allows us to start having that conversation.
The biggest shift for me has been in getting away from just what's going on in my classroom or within my grade, and much more kind of the lens of the whole school. So how can the work that I'm doing impact other grade levels? How can I support them? And then how do we kind of push everyone along?
I think it's made us work more together as a unit. So instead of working as silos, we're working together, not just even in grade level teams, but vertically teaming. So sometimes like our 1st grade teams will see that in kindergarten, they're missing this when they come to 1st grade. How can we team so that we're not having these big gaps and that they're fluidly transitioning from one grade to the next?
The best improvement in restarting the way we approach PLCs and allowing teachers to lead the process, I think, is that teacher input. And actually watching other teachers rise to being teacher leaders, instead of it just being 1 or 2 people, this is what we're doing, this is what, everybody else follow.
I think the biggest challenge that we still face is overcoming the 12 years of history of maybe ineffective work. There's been a lot of really good things that have happened, lots of islands of excellence in our district and this school. Some PLCs have worked really well together. And then there's been a lot of starts and stops and maybe not very effective, and different teams change and all of that. And so I think that historicity is something we still have to overcome. Like, we still have to build this capacity for the system, our system at our school, the bigger system, to be like, this is the best professional development, the PLC.
One of the huge things is getting to the point that we have the guaranteed and viable curriculum. So what's happening in my classroom here in first grade looks like what's going on in other places. And when we have kids move school to school, they're going to get the best experience that we can give them across our district.
First of all, I do love that we're all working together, that it even starts with our school board and superintendent and then the district guiding coalition. I think the next steps too are just kind of working together at that district level to figure out what should some of these meetings look like and how do we succinctly work as a district to make sure that no matter what school or grade level a kid goes to, it's not a lottery on the teacher and that they're getting that guaranteed viable curriculum.
So there were so many different things in that video that, first of all, we didn't script it for them. We just asked the questions and they authentically answered those questions. Some of the things that when I first watched it, I thought were impressive were the teacher voice was clearly represented in those responses. Support for teachers instead of accountability, two vastly different concepts. Communication up and down the system, guaranteed and viable curriculum, shared commitment and collective responsibility. Again, one of the fundamental things that we're trying to do is our district has done such amazing work for such a long period of time. And that's not the issue. It's been the islands of excellence, as Kurt referenced, that we have to overcome in creating consistent excellence across the system. And honestly, who is better to train teachers than teachers, right? Find those exemplars. It's imperative that those exemplars are based on data, essential standards, data, and goals. We go find them, and then they teach others. Because quite honestly, nobody wants to listen to Jim Gray give PD. I mean, the most effective are exemplar teachers. So why wouldn't their voices be the loudest? So appreciate you listening tonight. Any questions you might have, I'm here for you.
Any questions or comments?
Jim, I was a little confused. Did you say that you're bringing all those standards down to just 5?
No.
Okay.
Such a great distinction.
I heard and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, Kathy, thank you so much. This has been such a huge lift. Obviously, we've had a lot of great work done around identifying essential standards historically, and we wanted to honor that work. And then we wanted to solicit teacher voice purely in trying to identify standards. So these are not the 5 essential standards, but a set of prioritized standards in which we're trying to put out there that, generally speaking, these are the top 5 that have been identified by our system, right? And what's really important to note is that and we've shared all the data with all the buildings. What's important to note is that no one is going to come around and say that is not a standard that you should be working on, but it does provide some clarity on if you're in the top 7, it's okay. It's okay. These are the top fundamental essential standards that our system has identified. And if those are the ones that your PLC, your collaborative team are working on, that's a focus area, right? As opposed to spending a ton of time on number 27, right? So still a ton of work to do on it. The survey was a bit problematic on how to take it and how do we rank these. But again, with our focus on pulling teacher voice, it's been pretty effective. Still a lot of work to do, though.
Am I off base to ask if we could get a look at what the standards have evolved to?
Absolutely. We'll share it all.
Okay, that would be great. I just want to kind of have my head around what everybody else is, what the teachers are looking at, what the guiding coalition is looking at.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Interestingly, the raw data was looking at what all the different buildings, because we can actually pull how different buildings and different grade levels and different content areas, how they rank them. And that was super overwhelming. And so it wasn't in a usable format for even the district level guiding coalition. So we had to refine it to really simplify it. And now we're trying to do it even more. So like, well, here are the third grade reading standards that the district kind of prioritized. What was interesting when we brought them those standards to the co-leads was one building said, well, those aren't the ones that we identified. Yes, but over the system, this is kind of what the system said are the top. So, but absolutely, we'll share them all with you.
Great, thank you.
So my question, Jim, and I think I asked the same question last year. So I apologize, but in recognizing, let's say for instance, third grade, so 22 elementary schools, and every PLC team is probably going to look at the third grade reading standards slightly differently. Are there not resources at the state or other districts that are a little further in this journey to help us consolidate and focus those essential standards?
Yes. So it's interesting you said that, because OSPI is doing a ton of work on identifying some state level essential standards, which is a bit frustrating because now we've done a ton of our work and then the state is going to say, well, no, here they are, right? So that's a bit problematic for us. The essential standards being dictated, in my history with the district, teachers being told what the essential standards are is problematic at best, because the people that are actually doing the teaching and understanding how standards nest into the next unit, to the next standard, to the next grade level, to the next content area, really is reserved to those teachers. And it is fairly personal to a certain extent. So a district may say, this is our set of standards. And we've actually leveraged some other districts in that work. And our teachers are like, wow, I mean, we can't even agree definitely from building to building, let alone district to district. So it would be great if everyone agreed, but it's not that simple. But
So from the kind of the development of this, I know that you're recalibrating the calendar. How we measure our success, those were some pretty basically encapsulated all of our metrics in the district. So is there going to be any specific standard focused in measuring, once we do identify some targeted standards of measuring whether this PLC work is, is there a third grade reading standard that most of our schools buy in and say, yes, that's essential, and then use that kind of as a measurement tool towards the success of the progress?
yes, that's a great question, because it actually brings up the work of our large PLC, the entire district, the 4 essential teams needs to do to identify from the board level. And you've done that work with identifying, SBA, WIDA, different assessments or goals that right now you're looking at a ton of iReady and SBA data. Well, then what data is the district level guiding coalition looking at? It may be some of the same data, but it may be broken down by building. And then what are the building level guiding coalitions looking at? Because as we understand it, iReady is not necessarily readily usable by a PLC in the moment to impact student decisions. So the obvious answer is CFAs. Well, how do you develop CFAs that directly impact iReady scores, right? Especially when iReady scores are essentially 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. So we are going through a process with our district level guiding coalition to develop a plan that really encourages data analysis and developing priority sets of data that impact and nest within others. So when you look at SBA data, the work that a collaborative team might work on, you might not necessarily know what standard it is. They'll know, of course, but it nests within perhaps the iReady scores that then will impact SBA scores. So we will look specifically at, and that's what the essential standards work is designed to do, is to look at those, essentially the top 5 at this point, that then would impact those other assessment tools.
Thank you. That's what I was kind of hoping for, is that there's some sort of intermediate set of data that's going to hopefully impact kind of those elevated data sets.
Yeah, and another example is we do have multiple high schools that are accessing WIDA access scores and exit percentages from ML services as part of their SIP. Well, what essential standards nest within the ability to score well or exit out of ML services, right? So that's part of the work too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions about our PLC work? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So that does conclude our presentations tonight. I know, thank you for your attention. It's a lot. We had our student advisory, then we looked at each goal area from staff, community, and experience. And so we do have scheduled an executive session. So I think Director Sproul, probably 30 minutes would be sufficient. And we'll keep this link up and then come back and close this meeting when the executive session is concluded.
Okay, just for clarification, we are recessing for executive session for the purpose of legal to discuss pending litigation. And then secondly, we will be discussing personnel, the performance of a public employee. Okay. Good evening. Just returning from executive session. We are going to stay in executive session for another 15 minutes. We'll be back to close out the meeting. We have concluded our executive session for the evening. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.